Hi folks, you're with Tacitus today at your Pushback channel, and thank you for joining this radio live stream. In this essay, I'd like to talk about the conversion or the transformation of the Western business sector into some massive doll's house where snot-nosed people, either girls or people with girly attitudes, or women who behave like 8-year-old girls, now it's the attitude and the culture that's dominating pretty much the entire business sector. You can't really look in any direction and not find it these days. So now I get out and about around, sort of a lot of business, big, small government departments and so on. So I kind of get to see it up close and deal directly with some of these people, and I'm amazed that every year I think, well, it hits the low point. This is the lowest point it can get. It can't get any lower. But yet I'm constantly surprised that the next year it's lower again. And the sort of people that I'm seeing in what were once sort of upper middle management roles are the same sort of people that previously would have been parking lot attendants or trainee receptionists or so on. So it's pretty scary to sort of see this now. You kind of have to bite your tongue, and so it's not worth making a big deal about it. You just have to sort of smile and navigate around it as best you can. But I see the consequences of it, the causes, or the effects rather of this sort of thing, where you have so many unqualified people now in so many roles. And so I want to talk just generally about that, because it's being chewed up from both ends. There's the equity agenda, which is coming up, if you like, from the bottom, where people that hitherto would have only ever been floor sweepers are now being elevated into middle and upper middle management roles non-meritoriously. And again, merit has to be thrown out the door for this to happen. And there's an attitude now in most places of employment where they believe they're doing something incredibly virtuous by simply not hiring any straight white males. So any group other than straight white males is to be given preference, and we're seeing this across all sort of fields of endeavour, education and recruitment, everything imaginable. Places on quangos, places on boards of directors, places in public service departments, and the list goes on. And now it's quite brazen. It's supposed to be against the law, but it's quite brazen that there are so many adverts now that are directly saying that if you're straight, white, and male, do not apply. These jobs are only available for designated minorities, and there's not one. There are a plethora of government departments and legal outfits and NGOs with their activist legal divisions that are there to jump all over racial discrimination along these lines. But when whites are being discriminated against, nothing. There is not one penny available, certainly in all of Australia, to fight back against this, unless there's a wealthy white guy that they go after. Unless there's that, then there's no pushback at all. Not one government department, not one Department of Prosecutions or Justice Department. Nobody takes up the case. So white people can be arbitrarily discriminated against, and are, and nothing happens. But let's just have a look at the overall sort of the architecture of this and the effects of it. Now, I've spoken sort of a little bit before about how getting close to human resource departments or recruitment officers within the human resource departments, and whilst it's not codified into company policy or departmental policy, they have a view that they are doing something very good for the world. They're reversing what they've been taught has been the time-honoured oppression or eternal oppression of minorities. So they're changing that. So they're saying, okay, we're making a new world of equity, and it is a beautiful world. It is a paradise. It will be a paradise on earth, and we can achieve that paradise by not employing straight white males. I mean, because straight white males are the oppressors, of course. That's number one. But straight white males have this habit of believing in merit and hard work and rewards for hard work and these sorts of things, and that goes against the minority. Minorities can't get jobs if they have to rely on merit. They can only get jobs when they're allocated through equity programs and affirmative action and that sort of stuff. And so whatever creates this equity, equity as in ideological equity, is a good thing. So you get that. So as I get around, and with my colleagues and with fellow contractors, those sorts of things, as we get around, I'm seeing sort of unbelievable stuff. The people who they wouldn't. I would argue that most of them are probably unemployable in anything other than the most menial jobs, and yet here they are. I'm thinking about who's a company in financial services, and they've got this brown woman with minimally passable English, and she's she's got a $250,000 a year job. Now, in reality, she's nothing more than a receptionist, and probably wouldn't do a very good job at that. And when you have to do business with somebody like that, they're so unqualified and so unable to discharge the basic functions of their role that now you can't sort of say, hey, look, we need to do this work. Let's get on with it. You do this and get on with it. You can't do that because they'll become offended. They'll become insecure, and you're making me look bad, and you're assaulting my self-esteem. You're creating an unsafe space, or where they don't understand their job or how to do it, and by the way, make no effort to understand it. What they do know is how to point the finger and scream racist at everyone, or misogynist. They know that. They've got that down pat. But can they do their job? No. Do they want to do their job? Do they want to improve to do a better job? No. But they can scream racist and point in all directions. So you have to be very careful and very gentle with them. Otherwise, they'll start pointing fingers and screaming and all those sorts of things. It's the moral equivalent of insecure women crying rape. Oh, you're trying to rape me. It's that sort of thing, but without the pulling their blouse apart or something like that. So you have to be very careful and go very slowly. And in one case, this is going back some years now, it was so bad that I was sitting down with this is like the deputy CEO, and I said, look, this lady, she is comprehensively unqualified to do this job. She's slowing everything down. She's getting in the way. It's she's a real dead weight on things, and the only thing she can do is sweep the floor or answer the phone. And she has no talent whatsoever other than being obstructive and difficult. And that you have to be careful when you say that. Turns out this guy's having an intimate relationship with her, but we were told shortly after that we were no longer welcome on the premises. But the guy had clearly told her that's what I'd said, and which was silly. He shouldn't have done it. That was a private conversation with him explaining why the trouble that she was causing by her incompetence and ineptitude and her snotty attitude. But you've got to be very careful with that, and I would only do it in the most extreme circumstances, which that was. But otherwise, it's just not worth it. You just have to find a way around working with these people. So it adds time and cost and tests the patience of everyone concerned. But that's kind of how it is now. And dealing with ineptitude and incompetence over promoted people who have have no right to be doing that job in terms of qualifications and credentials. You still have to deal with them. Now, there's a sort of secondary attitude here, which is if we can reduce every job to just being a checklist, just, step one, do this, step two, do that, just a checklist, then any job is something that anyone can do. So, brain surgeon, cut hole in skull, stick knife in hole, like, hey, that's all there is to it. Well, what the fuck else do you need to know? Anyone can do that. Give the job to Shaniqua, she can do that. So there's this simplification of things, but as you get simpler and simpler management who completely lack sophistication in any sense, then you get that effect. So it's coming up from the bottom with affirmative action and quotas and that sort of thing. It's coming up from the bottom, and again, it's an equity agenda of how can we create equity. We'll give everyone a PhD. That's it. Just give it to them. Okay, now they've all got PhDs. Now they're all equal, and it's that simple attitude. Also, a very childlike attitude of which is a childish sort of concept of logic. Well, if there are bad things happening in the world, why don't we just stop the bad things? And then only good things will remain. And so then the world will be good. Well, okay, what are the bad things? Well, white supremacy and straight white males and black people aren't equal and lesbians. So we just have to stop. So if we stop white people and misogyny and racism and straight people and merit, and if we stop all that, then all the bad things will be gone, and there'll only be good things. Only good things will be there, and that's when the world will be a paradise. Okay, well, that's a take on things. So that's coming up from the bottom, but it's also happening from the top. Now, from the early 90s onwards, there was an increasing role in the overall business sector that the big financial houses played. The big banks, the big pension funds, and so on. They became very, very powerful. They can decide who sits on board of directors, who becomes a CEO. They have tremendous power to control, stock prices on the stock market, and all sorts of other things, whether a company gets a loan or not. And so tremendous power began to be accumulated in that end of town, and they throw their weight around, really throw their weight around. They can effectively rig any stock price to any level they want at any time. That's the extent of their power today. So, and probably was really from the early 2000s, I guess. So what they've been doing, especially say startup companies, but bigger businesses too, but say new high tech greenfield type startup businesses that attract a lot of venture capital or investors, big end of town investors anyway. Now, once the big end of town comes in, they invest in these things. They already have the long-term plan, so they get the business started, fatten it up. They have like a little sort of corralled off sector where the business can then do business with, buy and sell to other businesses in the, if you like, the family that's controlled by the big money boys. And so that artificially fattens it up. Then they go public with it and make a mozza there in fees and all sorts of things, and then they'll sell it off to some Chinese fucking company or something like that. So then they make another lick of money all the way around. So this is very much an orchestrated event. But what they've been doing is, and this has been going on for a little bit of time here. What the big money boys are doing is they're going to the wealthy socialite class in the West. So the wealthy socialites. The people that go running around to charity balls in gazillion-dollar diamond necklaces. And so, those sort of people, and going to them and saying, hey, guess what? We'll give you a prestigious position on the board of directors of this startup company. So you've got this bunch of socialites running around. Suddenly they're very important. And they've never had a job in their lives. Okay, but suddenly they're very important. They're a director of a company and Mr. Director and all this sort of thing. So they're very important people now. Previously, they've been wealthy people and have had social importance, and some of them are very charming, by the way. But they had social importance, but they haven't had business importance. They've never had a job. Sure, they invest in real estate, but only because they've got vast amounts of capital. Then they can sell these half a dozen houses or whatever they bought in a year or so's time and make a killing selling to Chinese mobsters who want to launder their money and so on. So this is, but I got called into. In fact, I've had a few here, but I got called into one. If this was a new technology and they were looking pretty good, or the technology looked pretty good, and then I did think it would go places. And the big money boys thought this was a sure fight. This is a sure thing, absolutely a sure thing. So they gifted out these director jobs to these old money socialites. Their money goes back quite a while. Not really the new money people, more the old money. Several generations of wealth. So now they needed to hire an actual CEO. This is the board of directors hired a CEO, and they were struggling a bit with it. And one of the sort of not the top tier but junior tier executives in one of the financial firms said, "Look, can you go and help them? I've given them your name, and could you at least give them a hand? They'll pay you and all this sort of thing, but they just need a bit of advice and a bit of hand holding." So he admitted that they didn't know diddly squat and they shouldn't be running a bath, let alone a fucking business. But so sure, I'll go along. Now, again, come back to the children in the doll's house sort of thing. You're getting that at the bottom, these snotty-nosed children in their ideological fantasy world that they live in. But it's also coming in from the top. So there's these socialites repeating. They've never had a job, never worked a day in their lives. And they've got that sort of calm confidence, sort of social confidence that comes from never having had to worry about an outcome, never having had to take responsibility for a practical or physical outcome. So they, whenever there's a problem, they can just throw money at it and make it go away. And so they've got that confidence of people who've never had to strive, who've never had to test themselves, who've never had to take a risk and this sort of thing. So, to them, embarrassment is turning up for a charity ball in the wrong clothes or something like that. That's their level of. But now they've been given these jobs as directors in a business. So they've got no understanding of the technology, no understanding of business, no understanding of work, no understanding of responsibility, this sort of thing. So they have to sort of get advice, but they don't even know how to take advice on these things. It's just too technical for them. They can understand social nicety complications, but not this. It's just too nuts and bolts. So anyway, I'm sitting down with them, and I've made reference to this before in another video, but sitting down with them, and so I tried to walk them through it and thought, what's their level of understanding? Now, within seconds, it was clear that they didn't have a fucking clue. I didn't need to spend an hour interviewing them or speaking with them. It was just the utterances they were making. But again, it's very childlike, this very childlike understanding of things. They were in it for the glory and the prestige and wanted the prestige. They didn't want to fuck it up only because they were fearful that it may affect their prestige. They actually weren't concerned about the consequence of the business fucking up. It was their prestige they didn't want to expose or have at risk. So we're talking about the CEO. So they got to hire a CEO. Okay, so that's the thing. So they have, again, this childish attitude. If we take out all the bad things, only the good things will remain. It's a very childish form of logic, and a very easy trap to fall into, by the way. As having sort of been a CEO and that sort of thing, it is an attractive trap to fall into because it makes the complicated and the nuanced. It makes it appear very simple. It's either A or it's B. And that sort of has an attraction to many people, and it's very difficult from an intellectual point of view and from a point of view of responsibility to actually take on that thinking through, the heavy lifting of thinking through the nuances and the implications of decisions and what has to be done, or navigating out of a series of problems, whatever it might be. These people have none of that experience and would stare blankly if me blankly at me if I tried. In fact, I did try to explain it, and they did stare blankly at me. So the thing here is they fell into the trap of simplifying. So we need a CEO. He needs to have technical expertise in this role now. So how do we know if he's got technical expertise? Well, he's got to have a degree. Okay, all right. Then now I remember I'm talking him through. I want to see how far they'll go into fantasy land before they'll check themselves. Do I have to stop them, or they just keep on going into fantasy land, into the valley of death themselves without any help from me? So, and then someone else comes up. Well, I really should be a master's. Not wanting to be outdone someone else. This is the directors are together. Okay, not wanting to be outdone. They a PhD. So all right then. So I'm taking the notes, just nodding and going along with it. Now, bear in mind we're meeting in a very luxurious hotel, and they've paid for catering, and there are white coated waiters coming in and bringing all sorts of hors d'oeuvres and finger food and whatnot. It's very, very nicely done. And there's a special coffee machine there that's doing very good coffee, by the way. So it's I don't know what that cost them, but this room wasn't in the basement or anything. It was again very nice room, and the food was I would describe it as sumptuous even. So anyway, so PhD. So it's all right. And then someone else. Well, they also have to understand how to present the product internationally. Well, they should have a degree in international business, master's, PhD, and they went on through a series of degrees. So each category of knowledge that the person had to have, in their view, had to be a PhD. So the person needed 6 PhDs because they had to be able to sell. Degree in sales and marketing. They had to be able to degree in international relations. They had to be a degree in finance, degree in, and so on. So it was this sort of farce of. So we came back to this issue of the degrees, and they said, well, we don't know how to understand or determine if somebody we interview has those skills. They collectively, well, we don't know if they have these skills. We don't know what questions to ask. We don't even know if they how well they would know these things. We're in case, and they didn't. This is, I'm paraphrasing. They didn't fess up to this extent, but they said, well, we don't know what to do. We don't even know how to go about determining if this person has the necessary skills, attributes, credentials, qualifications. The only way we can do it is to reduce it to a form that we can understand. And if they've got a PhD, we can assume they do understand it, therefore the PhD. So it's all right. Well, if we look at the PhDs you want this person, that means they would need to spend. And these people, again, this is how simple these fucking people are. They didn't spot this themselves. I had to tell them this. So they want 7 PhDs. That means they would need to have been at university for 42 years. 42 years at university to get those degrees. And so when I said that very gently, so I made sure you're sure that you want these degrees and the PhDs, and they're going to yes, oh yes, it has to be. It's all right then. And then I said, well, then they'd need to be 42 years. And there was this look of incredulity around the room. What? 42 years? What are you talking about? What do you mean? Add it up again. So I had to get up on the the marker board and say, okay, well, here it is. Now, again, I would have spotted that straight away, the impracticality of that. And you don't need to be a business genius to see the impracticality here. 42 years in university. What a joke. No one's going to be fucking 42 years in university. And now 42 years in university, and they want a certain amount of experience. Well, he has to have 5 years experience with this. Oh, it has to be 10 years experience with that. So, right, well, the person is going to be, in order to meet your criteria of academic qualifications and work experience and the levels of seniority you want, they're going to have to be like fucking 90 years old. And at the same time, you want someone who's vigorous and young and ambitious, or young enough and ambitious enough. So you want someone sort of late 30s to mid 40s. So how can we reconcile these things? what are you talking about? What do you mean? Oh, what are you saying? And it threw them into this sort of panicky type of confusion. And they were aware that they looked stupid, and yet they walked into it. No, they didn't walk into it. They marched into it, in step. And so pointing this out was something. But it was a pathetic effort there. These people had no idea. They shouldn't have been doing this, because it's such a surefire thing, and because the big banks are looking after sort of the old money, set in town, and it's all mutual back scratching and favors and patronage and handouts, and these people will then make sure that the bank manager's wife or sister is going to get appointed as a trustee for the art gallery or the museum, and so it's all that sort of interlocking patronage machine that goes on. And but these people shouldn't be running a bath. So I had to go through and say, all right, then we'll look. Let's assume the 45 years old, is a realistic thing. Then there's only a certain amount of academia that someone would have been, could have fitted into that many years. And so, would you agree that experience is going to be more valuable than just academia? Oh, but how do we know? How do we know whether they know? And then you could see almost a panicky thing. But how do we know? If they haven't got a PhD, we just can't know if they know. So no, stop, slow down. Okay, let's have a look at what business. Let's have a look at this business. This business is this sort of business. It's structured this way, and it's going to play out about like this. Is that sort of you go out to sell your products and so on. So someone who's been in a business similar to that, and who's these are the challenges that will be faced. So you'll need someone who's faced these challenges and has overcome them, so that that's or dealt with them and been successful in them and so on. So you have to walk them through very, very slowly, and they're nodding, yeah, but it was like talking to children, and not children in the sense that they weren't socially sophisticated. They were. These people, they've been to the very best schools. They've been to the very best universities, or the most expensive, and they've got again socially sophisticated, wealthy people who live in very nice suburbs, in very nice houses, and drive very nice cars and go on very nice vacations, all that sort of stuff. But they've never had a job and never had to actually make money and suffer risk. And the bottom line is they were terrified at having to make a decision. Absolutely terrified them, because deep down they knew they weren't up to it. But I just want to talk about the amount of managers that are boards of directors and senior managers around the place that actually fall into this category. A lot of them will just hire one of their buddies as the CEO and just hope for the best. Very few of them are actually concerned about hiring professional managers or anything like that. Far from it. There's certainly an emphasis on these people hiring each other, and because they're irresponsible, in as much as they've never had to deal with responsibility, the childish element comes through. And there's a third factor as well, which I'll add here. In say some of the new technologies, space age technologies type stuff, the government is, most Western governments are subsidising this and giving grants and handouts and tax breaks and accelerated depreciation and things, giving a whole range of stuff to support some of these newer industries, which is a good thing, by the way. But in return, the government is demanding that these companies embrace equity, and this so the money that the government, taxpayer money, the money is that the government's giving these people, they might as well have just flushed down the toilet. For the good it's doing, and having dealt with a few of these, it's a bit of a sad state of affairs. Now, little while ago, 6 months ago, we were dealing with an organisation recipient of quite a lot of government money, and I think they've got the nucleus of some very clever technology they're developing there. By the way, they've got some very sharp scientists who are doing some good work there, all straight white guys, as it turns out. And but the government's giving them money and saying, well, if we give you this money, there are strings attached. You have to embrace an equity agenda, not an equity agenda just in the amount of black lesbians you employ, but that we want black lesbians in the prestigious, high-tech scientific jobs. So in your research team, you've got for example, five white guys. We expect you to add 3 black lesbians to that team. So we want, non-white, non-male, non-straight people in the company, in the management roles, in the scientific roles, in the research roles, and so on. So they're actually forcing them to put minorities in all the positions that would be considered as prestigious or important and so on. Now that it's going to another level when the government's forcing the equity agenda on the real workers. I'm sure you can sort of get away with black lesbian managers here and there, and all you do is sort of work around them, reduce the amount of decisions they have to make or demand that they stick closely to the checklist and they tick the boxes as they go down the page. But when you're forcing these people into the into things like the scientific research side of things, then it's a different game, and it shows. So working around there and getting around there, you're dealing with people who, and I'm sitting down with one of the senior technical, I think they were called the executive technical coordinator or something like that. But it's again a job that pays quite well, and so I'm sitting down with he's brown, he's not black, the guy, and we're talking about the technology that I know something about, and we're talking so I'm going through some of the things that are basic, and I noticed the blank expression coming on his face, and we're not talking the top end of the high tech stuff here. We're talking about the basic technology of that of those product developments, and so and he knows nothing about it. So okay, right, well, don't you want to bone up on that or something? Like, isn't that your job? And but it's not. He's being appointed as an affirmative action appointment. He's part of a quota system, and he's been gifted this well-paying job, but he's not making the best of it, which is nearly the case everywhere I go. Now, with this opportunity, certainly if it was thrown to me or many other people, I go, wow, what an opportunity here. I'm going to bust my ass reading every scientific paper I can on this, and talk to every engineer I can to get more. I'd be out there wanting to become expert in my field, given the job responsibility that I theoretically had, and I would spend every waking moment trying to be the very best I could in that field of endeavor. But these people don't. They've been gifted at the reason they can't get better jobs, and the reason that they're only ever going to be pushing brooms and car park attendants and that sort of thing is because of this. Is because they don't have that concept of merit, that get up and go, that drive, that commitment to succeed and achieve and so on. So you're getting it coming in from 3 directions here now, and because of that, the entire business sector is turned into this feminist little game of 8-year-old girls playing silly little dolls house games. You've been with Tacitus today, your Pushback channel, and thank you for listening.